Today's topic, syphilis. Okay, let me back up a little. Hi, my name is Carolina, and this is Textory. It's a podcast where we read crazy historical text. If you want to support the podcast, head to patreon.com/textory for some additional materials and, in general, fun stuff. Back to the topic of today's video, which is the Great Pox epidemic of the 17th century. Fun! This is going to be a little not safe for work, so proceed with headphones and caution, because both the nature of the disease, like the way it is transmitted, and also the descriptions of the disease might be a bit graphic. So back in the 17th century, they actually couldn't really differentiate between several different sexually transmitted diseases. So we're not sure that the author of the text that we're reading today is actually referring to syphilis. And even syphilis back then was called numerous different names, so we're not even sure what he's describing. But also apparently back then, syphilis was a very different disease, because from what I understand, it has mutated over the centuries. And back then, it was much more lethal. It was much more vicious, and it covered a much wider variety of symptoms than the disease that we know nowadays. I'm going to read a description of what went down when you caught syphilis. It's a description from Science Museum in London, like literally their website is sciencemuseum.org.uk. And this is the description. Typically, a few weeks after sexual contact with an infected individual, painless ulcers would appear, sometimes just one and usually on the genitals. They could pass unnoticed, and either way they soon disappeared as the disease entered a period of dormancy, but not for long. In the secondary stage, a variety of symptoms could arise. Most commonly, these were rashes on one or more areas of the body, but they could include flu-like fatigue, headaches, and swollen glands. More distressingly, pustules could develop on the skin, which oozed a foul-smelling discharge. And this is a quote from 1519. Boils that stood out like acorns, from whence issued such filthy stinking matter, that whosoever came within the scent believed himself infected. This is the end of the 1519 quote. Generally, these symptoms would gradually disappear, and an individual might even believe themselves cured. Sadly, they would be wrong. The disease then lay dormant in the body for years, even decades, before it reappeared. After this latent stage, the final stage was tertiary syphilis, which could be truly horrific. Again, it could manifest itself in a number of ways as an individual's skin, bones, and internal organs faced severe and permanent damage. While some succumbed to heart failure, others developed grotesque tumor-like growths known as gummas. They often appeared on the face as bone and skin began to rot and disintegrate. If the nasal cartilage collapsed, the sufferer could appear flat-faced and lacking a nose. So alarming could be the results that such individuals were often ostracized from society. In a significant minority of cases, the greatest impacts of the tertiary stage could be on the brain and nervous system. The so-called madhouses or asylums of the time contained many an aging syphilitic, often blind, with their minds and personalities destroyed by the illness. Okay, that's a lot. Even concerning historical diseases, there's a lot happening. It completely destroys your body, from my understanding of it. So the book we're reading today is called Observations on the Venereal Disease, with the true way of curing the same. It's from 1686. It's by Charles Peter, a chirurgeon, so basically a surgeon. He was a royal surgeon, and there is his trade card, which trade card was basically like a business card or a flyer, in the collection of the British Museum. And it says, Charles Peter, surgeon, served King Charles ye II in ye Dutch wars, surgeon of ye horse guards to King James and surgeon of the household to King William, daily prepares his cordial tincture and pills, which have cured thousands of ye colic, stone, gravel, scurvy and dropsy, etc. Gives advice to the poor as well as rich at his house in St. Martin's Lane, near Long Acre, where he had lived between 30 and 40 years. So this is the guy that wrote the book. And he also apparently ran a bathing house where he gave people his special treatments and medicines. So I think this book was written as a sort of, look, guys, I actually know how to handle this, and here is why I am so much better than all these other folks. And he describes a lot of his inventions and treatments that he thinks are best. But was he actually that much better? Well, I mean, syphilis treatment became successful around 20th century and the widespread manufacture of penicillin, so probably not. But let's see what he has to offer. Chapter 1 of the original of the Lues Venerea, by the way, I'm gonna butcher all those Latin names, but I don't care. And several names of it. Concerning the beginning of this disease, authors are various, and I find that it had variety of names in several times and places, but my opinion is that the disease is very ancient and may challenge almost as much antiquity as the sin of uncleanliness. For the names of it, I will set down but these few. The Italians call it Morbus Gallicus. The French call it Scabies Hispanica and Morbus Italicus. In Spain, they call it Morbus Neapolitanus. In England, we call it Morbus Gallicus. And Lues Venerea, by the last name, I intend to treat of it. This is actually very true. So throughout history, people were very confused as to where this disease came from, how it came about. Even modern scientists still struggle to pinpoint like where in history it started. We used to think that it was brought by Columbus and his men from the New World, and now new studies suggest that it actually existed in antiquity in Europe, so it's all very confusing. But it is true that people were very keen on accusing other people of being responsible for the disease. So, for example, you would use that as an excuse to harass and bully minorities and other nations, and you would accuse your neighbors of bringing it into your country. So nobody wanted to take responsibility for it, and it was sort of a good thing to throw at people and be like, yeah, you're the ones that brought it here. As he mentions, there were a lot of names for it, and usually the name in your language or in your country would be that it's a disease of the people that you disliked or had beef with or had wars with. So it was very emotionally charged. Chapter 2. The causes of the Lues Venerea and several ways of infecting. The causes of this distemper are twofold. The first, of an occult quality, being as a scourge laid on mankind by the Almighty to restrain our too wanton lusts. The other is by an impure touch or contagion, especially in copulation. Here we go to the not safe for work part, but basically I find it so interesting, and it always shocks me how I find it, especially in 17th century writing, maybe that was the climate of, the witch hunts and all that, but they always tend to believe in some sort of supernatural powers of the god. So they would believe that God would interfere with their lives to the level of, sending bad stuff, sending plagues down. And it's something that I think disappeared around 18th century. Maybe it was the Enlightenment, but it remained in maybe rural communities. But a renowned surgeon in the city of London would probably not have the same theories by the end of the next century. A man receiving of an infected vapor or filthy zanies into the pores of the skin or into the urethra, as well before the ejecting of the seed, as after, the woman having either a gonorrhea or else an ulcer, or perhaps only the foul seed of some infected person left in her, some small time before, which being lodged in the wrinkles of the womb, may be drawn in by the pores of the extended penis. What am I reading? So that 'tis possible for a man to get this disease by a woman that was never infected herself. Is it? I don't think it is. He's saying that someone, I don't want to talk about this, but he's saying that a previous guest of the woman left something, a gift, and then the next guest touched the gift and got infected. I don't think it's possible. There is a great deal of variety in bodies, some being far more easily infected than others, as sanguine and phlegmatic persons, but are more easily cured than choleric or melancholy persons are. So because of the four humors theory, they believed that there is like 4 types of people basically in the world, or rather that the 4 humors combined make up your personality. So if you're depressed, they would probably be like, oh, he's just, the melancholy humor is off the rails in this one. Which, I mean, they had no better ways to describe things or understand any sort of psychology, so this is the best they got. Chapter 3, the signs of the lues venerea. The signs of this distemper are various, according to the strength and constitution of the patient. The general signs are these: a debility of the whole body, as if wearied by much labor, which is caused by the infection of the spirits. Okay. So what he's saying is the plague, or the great pox rather, attacked your mind, or your spirit rather. A stiffness of the joints, but more especially of the hips and thighs. Great pulsation of the arteries. A shooting pain in the groins. Pain in the cod. Itching about the root of the yard. Sharpness of urine, and a pricking pain in erection. A flowing of yellow zanies from the yard of times. Okay, wait a minute. I had to dig deep in places I didn't want to find out the 17th century terminology for men's private parts. So cod is testicles and yard is the penis. Flowing of yellow zanies from the yard, I don't want to know what that is. Pain in the back and in the head. These are the infallible signs of a gonorrhea. Some of them happening to one and some to another. And yet I have known all of them to happen to one person, and at one time some have other symptoms. I mean, he probably said a lot. He was a surgeon. He was probably called to pretty disgusting and hopeless cases. I'm gonna give it to him. I have not seen a person suffering from syphilis, so he probably knows best. But at the same time, he was a 17th century man that had limited access to biology and medical texts and all that stuff and the knowledge that we have. So I'm gonna take whatever he says with a grain of salt, because I'm assuming he saw things, but the way he interpreted things may have been drastically different to what we know now. Chapter 4, the dangerous effects of the lues venerea. To demonstrate all the effects of this raging distemper would take up much time. Therefore, as briefly as possible, I will acquaint thee how great a tyrant this disease is to those people who either scorn to own they have it, or those who, being ashamed to confess their condition, rather venture to undergo it, than wisely to seek for help. I have known some so sordidly foolish that, having had ulcers on the penis, have so long flighted the disease, until the penis hath been mortified even unto the belly, upon which ensued immediate death, and some escaping with their lives have lost most part, if not all of the members. What is he talking about? I don't think I want to know. What is this? Is he saying that it was some sort of deformity? What is happening here? Were the private parts so infected that they just fell off? Like, what does mortified unto the belly mean? I am so curious, but I'm really glad this book doesn't have any pictures, because I am not ready to see anything regarding this. Like, I'm just observing from a distance, that's all. I have known of others to have been almost eaten up by this disease before they have known so much as the name of their malady. I think this is the problem that the Science Museum text mentioned, which was after the initial symptoms of the disease, it sort of quiets down and remains dormant for years and decades, and you might not even notice that you ever had it until it's, again, a really bad state. I have seen many women with large ulcers in the neck of the womb, which have caused continual pains by corroding of the parts. Some have the uvula and the palate of the mouth eaten away by ulcers, and many you see who lose their noses by this violent disease, Some have the tip of the nose and nostrils eaten away. This is what the text as well mentioned, and I think it must have been pretty common because there's a lot of literary depictions of people with their noses deformed by syphilis or just mention of them in different texts and media, so that was probably pretty common. Some lose their eyes and many their hearing, and some their mouths drawn away, and indeed could quote multitudes of examples of the fury of it. Again, this guy saw things. I 100% believe him when he says that. He's seen things that no one should see. Oh, how intolerable are the pains that many poor wretches endure by this distemper, especially in the night, at which time it most boldly walks its rounds to afflict poor mortals. For indeed all pains are worse in the night than the day. I have to say, this is something that gets me every time I'm reading any sort of historical texts or media regarding people's illnesses or just being ill, because how did they do it? I just don't get it. There's so much pain and suffering that is solved now that we have methods to deal with, and they didn't. And I just really don't understand how an average person with chronic migraines or something survived in that era, let alone someone eaten away by syphilis. I really don't get it. I mean, even nowadays, obviously there are people that are chronically ill or they suffer every day, but at least we try, at least we study, at least we have some sorts of methods of dealing with that. I mean, even painkillers, they didn't even have painkillers. How did they manage? They must have been so uncomfortable all the time. Even small things that we can deal with, like a toothache or something, it must have been so annoying to just exist in a body in a time when medicine was so badly. I really don't get it. And descriptions of such horrific diseases such as this, how did they not just off themselves? Because like, honestly, I would not manage. And imagine this is going for like years. This is like 40 years of your life. If you're lucky, you'll just catch something else and die before that. But it's insane. It's insane to think about. So be grateful for whatever medicine you're taking because, I mean, people have prayed for these for centuries. Chapter 6. Of several ways of curing the pox. As there is great variety in the nature of this disease, so is there several ways used for the curing of it, among which some are so dangerous that many persons have perished in their supposed cure, and others have been attended by such fierce accidents that neither time nor example could ever remedy. As for example, fumigation by cinnabar, that old and dangerous way, has proved itself so pernicious that the use of it is almost quite left. Okay, so they did try things, and some of them were even more deadly. Some of the cures were even more deadly than the disease itself. But also he points out that there is a great variety in the nature of this disease, which leads me to think that he talks about syphilis, but he also talks about other STDs that manifested in similar ways. So they were quite difficult to differentiate. Unction by the common mercurial unguent, a way though commonly used, yet not commendable, for by the use of the unguent, many times the salivation rises so fiercely that the patient is suffocated. So they tried curing the syphilis with mercury, but they accidentally suffocated the patient, so that's not ideal. Sweating, which is diverse ways to be caused. Some use the hothouse, baño, so that's what, bath, right? Others, the tub or box, and cradle. All these names tell me nothing. I don't actually know what he's talking about, but he's probably talking about like different types of saunas and bathing things to cause sweating. Diet, which is a safe way working moderately and yet surely. My meaning here is, by the use of a good convenient diet drink, aptly fitted to the constitution of the patient. This is literally something that a modern doctor would say to you when you're like eaten by a disease and they're like, yeah, you need to pay attention to your diet. So, I mean, nothing changed from 1686, everyone. Purging, which is a safe way and daily experience, teaches that many venereal cases are treated by no other means and yet are very handsomely cured. They loved their purging, man. I mean, this was basically making your patient vomit and defecate so that all of the food is gone from their body. And I can with modesty affirm that I have cured many hundreds by this way alone. For what other way can or may be used to those poor unhappy wretches where pox and poverty are complicated, and 'tis to be observed that although none of the forementioned means are able to cure this disease without the help of purging, yet this way has cured many without other helps. So far he's like, purging is the most successful way to cure people of syphilis, which doubt. Chapter 7. The true way of curing the pox. This was all the other methods, and now is the right method to do it. Now, since so many ways are or may be used to cure this disease, 'tis the duty of every honest artist rightly to consider the patient's case and justly to weigh what sort of cure may be most fit for them. For as there is great variety in the disease, so must there be in the cure. Yeah, he's already said that. Some persons must of necessity keep up, others have not, nay, cannot have the conveniency of retirement. Some bodies will admit of the most rough ways of cure, others must have more gentle means used. I mean, this is all solid advice. If you gave strong medicine to someone that was already weak, you could worsen their case. First, observe there is degrees of the pox that no internal medicine can reach. No fume, no salivation, no diet, purgation, sweating, etc. can help. What's then to be done? Where medicine cannot reach, manual operation must. For wherever the pox fouls a bone, naught but exfoliating can avail. I think this is to me the craziest part of this disease, because years ago I went to this chapel in southwestern Poland, and this chapel was made of human skulls and bones because, you know, Catholicism. It was really old, like all of the bodies there were, I think they dug them up in like maybe 17th century, made it into a chapel. It was probably like some plague victims, I don't remember exactly, but one of the guides showed us one skull that was at the front of the chapel. I think it was like under a glass, and it had those weird spots on it. It had like growths on it, and I was like, how does that happen? Like, what sort of disease do you need to literally modify your bones? And the guy was like, yeah, syphilis. That's syphilis for you. That's one of the craziest things I've ever seen, I think. And every time they mention the bones in the book, I'm like, oh my God, I remember that skull. Chapter 9, the conclusion. I am now arrived at 40 years of age, and must therefore know 'tis impossible to please all men. My little book will be read by people of all sorts, and I must endure the snarling of knaves and fools, who neither will nor can do the like to advance the common good, and fops will find fault with what they cannot mend. And indeed 'tis hard for me to forbear it, for I am sure the substance of my book is new, though the disease be old. I have borrowed from no man, I have stolen from no author, I have writ nothing but what I have seen and often experienced. Why does it sound like no AI was used in writing this book? And that in this town there is not a word in it, but that those that know me have at one time or other heard from me upon occasion in discourse or in consultations with physicians, and I hope I may without vanity say that he which takes the pains to read it will find something in it, either like his own or some friend's case, and that it will not be altogether his labor lost. This last part made me wonder who the book was directed to. Was it directed to fellow physicians? Was it directed to people that were just curious about the disease? Was it directed to people that were suffering from the disease? Probably all of them. But I'm just like, who was the target demographic here? Why did you... Because at the end he made it sound like there's other physicians that might disagree or think his methods are not that groundbreaking. So Is that what the book was for? To just brag about his new methods? Or was he actually trying to help people? I'm really curious because obviously he was a surgeon, so he wanted new clients, but then who could read? Who could read in 17th century London? Especially concerning, people that were infected. It was not the disease of the rich, as we sometimes hear. A lot of people living in poverty were also struggling with that, and they could not read the book. So was it for someone that knew them or took care of them? I'm actually really curious. But also I think back then you could basically know how to read and write and you would just publish your own stuff because you could. I mean, basically vanity publishing. I feel extra grateful for my health today, not gonna lie. As I said, every time I read historical texts regarding medicine and disease, I am so happy I live in the 21st century. It must have been genuinely horrific to live in the past. Like, genuinely, I could never. So let me know what you think. Could you ever do it? Could you even time travel to that particular scene of like people being eaten away by a disease, literally eaten away, and you having to see that? Because maybe not. Maybe I'm not built for this. I may faint, probably, and be never the same. So let's just remember them. Let's remember all that people went through. That's my motto of the day. I don't know. Anyway, as always, remember to support Textory on patreon.com/Textory, and I'll hear you in another episode. Bye!